Hello guys, and welcome to another video by Muscle Mutant. This video will be about the legendary 1993 Mr. Olympia, which was worn by the shadow Dorian Yates. The event also witnessed the rise of a new legend, namely Flex Wheeler, who was placed second. The pictures are taken from muscletime.com and ambal.ru. So let's get started. The front double biceps clearly shows Flex superiority. Flex in his prime had among the greatest biceps in the 90s. The size and the peak he had in his biceps was simply insane. Dorian, on the other hand, was not so gifted in his biceps as he was in his back and calves. Flex midsection is smaller and way more aesthetic than that of Dorian, and we will come to see that when they hit the abs and thighs. Dorian lats are way wider and denser than those of Flex. Dorian easily had one of the greatest, if not the greatest, backs in bodybuilding history. Their wheels are great, huge, ripped, separated, and conditioned. We can easily see the striations in Flex wheels, but overall, Dorian's wheels are more huge. Now this is another front double biceps shot, which clearly shows the insane biceps Flex had. He was way more aesthetic than Dorian, but Dorian was more huge overall with the wider lats. Dorian easily wins the front lat spread pose. He is wider than the more aesthetic Flex. Flex midsection looks great in this pose. His arms look bigger as well. His wheels look more ripped, but maybe due to the lighting. Another front lat spread, which shows how wider Dorian's lats were. He left no chance whatsoever for Flex to win any point in this pose. This shot also shows how great Dorian's calves were in his prime. Dorian used to hit an incredible side chest pose. Although Flex had the better and the more rounded shoulders and aesthetic arms, yet Dorian's chest was on another level. The pump Dorian had in his chest with all the striations make it very difficult for Flex to match him in this pose. Their midsection was tight, as no one back then ever heard of the bubble gut yet, and their wheels looked awesome. Another side chest pose, which clearly shows that Dorian used to hit this pose better than Flex did. Flex was so ripped and striated in his chest and shoulders, but I still think Dorian would win this pose, as in my opinion his chest was wider and denser than that of Flex overall. This side triceps, both Dorian and Flex had great triceps in their prime, but Dorian used to hit this pose perfectly. His horseshoe triceps along with his shoulders and insane forearms were really great. His chest looks great and his midsection was tight. Flex shows huge and complete triceps in this pose, but we can't judge him fairly in this shot. Unfortunately, the side triceps pictures are scarce from this event. This back shot clearly shows that Dorian was superior to everyone when it comes to his back. He is wider, more huge, denser, and more ripped than Flex was. His glutes were on another level, so were his hamstrings and incredible calves. If the judges were rooting for Flex from the front, then they definitely changed their opinions once they turned their back. Their back double biceps pose was really incredible. Flex lines were definitely insane, and that's why he was nicknamed the Sultan of Symmetry. Look at the striations and the vein in his rib traps. Look at his lats and rear shoulders. Look at his incredible arms and the peak in his biceps. Unfortunately for Flex though, his glutes and hamstrings were not as good as his upper section. Dorian, on the other hand, used to hit a great back double biceps, showing his incredibly ripped traps. His traps used to look insane in this pose, but not in the most muscular pose, as we are gonna see in a couple of shots. His traps extend down to his lower back, which was way better than that of Flex, with that ripped and striated Christmas tree. His striated glutes and hamstrings easily destroy Flex in this pose. Dorian's back lat spread pose was among, if not the greatest of all time. Flex, on the other hand, did not hit an impressive back lat spread. The width Dorian had in his lats was insane. He was huge, wide, ripped, and dense. There was no chance for the contenders back then to match this package Dorian managed to present in 1993. His lower section, including his striated glutes, hamstrings, and insane calves, easily stomped Flex. Now we move on to the abs and thighs. Flex abs and thighs pose was insane. His waist was genetically narrow and his six-pack abs were ripped, defined, and highly aesthetic. His biceps look incredible in this pose and his thighs were ripped and highly conditioned. You can easily see the striations in his quads. Dorian's abs, on the other hand, were not that aesthetic and his midsection was not as impressive as that of Flex. Yet, his lats look clearly wider with the V-sweep he shows in this pose, but overall, I would give the abs and thighs to Flex. Now we come to the most muscular pose. The most muscular pose shots are scarce from this show, yet this shot would give us an idea. Dorian's most muscular pose was mediocre at its best. His traps in this pose did not show well as in his back double biceps pose. His shoulders were huge and ripped, but not as rounded nor as aesthetic as those of Flex. Dorian's chest was more huge and denser, but his arms were definitely not as impressive nor as genetically gifted as those of Flex. His wheels look huge, ripped and separated, and his calves were among the greatest in bodybuilding history, along with those of the late Mike Matarazzo. Flex, on the other hand, looks smaller, yet more aesthetic. His traps show in this standing most muscular pose, and his rounded shoulders look insane. His chest looks smaller, yet ripped and striated. His arms are incredibly aesthetic and symmetrical. His abs are ripped, and his midsection overall was more aesthetic than that of Dorian. His legs were ripped and striated, but he was criticized for not having size in his wheels. Dorian Yates won the 1993 Mr. Olympia from the back. His lats width and overall back development, including his glutes, hamstrings, and calves, gave him the win against the new star back then, Flex Wheeler, who came second. Flex was incredibly aesthetic and was clearly better than Dorian in some specific areas, such as his arms, shoulders, and midsection, but that was not enough to dethrone the Shadow, who was superior in his chest, insane back, and wheels. Check out the annotation to watch a footage of Flex posing on the Olympia stage in 1993. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thanks for watching, and have a nice one.